Welcome everyone to another episode of Exploring Concept Art with me, your host, Jason Etienne. This week we're going to be exploring a little bit about perspective. Before we get onto that though, I always like to start the session by having a doodle. Yeah, I really do encourage you to have a doodle, do doodles. So try out the brushes, play around with opacities, use the smudge tool, start to warm the hand up. This has become a reoccurring motif with these videos that I do. I talk about warming the hand up, yeah, trying out brushes, seeing what works. I say this to my students very often, which is, just before you do anything, test things out. Don't just leap straight into trying to draw. You see in the way that like musicians play, before they start a song. It could be in the Philharmonic, orchestra. It could be a guitarist. They'll generally play with the strings. They try out some chords, things like that, and it's generally just making sure that they're in tune. And it's just little practices. Even sports people do this. Sports people warm up, right? So they warm up, do a bit of leg stretching. So this is your leg stretching, yeah. This is your tuning up. Warming up, having a play, getting the muscles working in my hand, getting that hand-eye coordination going, and just getting confident with the brush tool. And if I remember correctly, I'm going to continue having a bit of a doodle and then sort of start to leap into the session. So first is, if you don't understand about perspective, it goes like this. You've got different points of perspective, 1 point, 2 point, 3 point. It starts off with a horizon line, which is basically where the land disappears, and then you have a vanishing point. So this is where all these things called receding lines disappear to. And sketches usually happen like this. So if we're going to go on to say doing a 1 point perspective, you'd start by drawing a square somewhere in the middle, perhaps off center, below the horizon line. Okay, but this, if you want to be able to sort of draw straight lines, use the shift button, but you should know this already. So I've drawn that there, and then what I do is I connect up all the corners to the vanishing point with the receding lines. So it's quite a relatively simple exercise. So if you ever want to know how to create a cube, this is how you do it. Yeah, a square, and then the receding lines go to the vanishing point, and then use vertical and horizontal lines to basically finish the cube. And essentially you've drawn a cube. Yeah, so if you've done that, if you managed to do that, congratulations. That's essentially perspective drawing. So I'm going to show you 3 examples. So we've got that one done there. I'm just going to minimize that, put it up in the corner, and then we come on to 2 point perspective. So it's the same or similar thing again, except this time you have 2 vanishing points. So one either end, so not in the middle, and you start off with a line. This time you're drawing a line underneath the line, a vertical line, and then you join both ends up to each respective vanishing point. You then draw vertical lines to define the edges of the box, and then you join up the corners again like the previous one. You join up the corners, and finally just increase the opacity and define the edges there. Now that's 2 point perspective. Yeah, so you're seeing both sides plus the top. Again, just going to minimize that. Next is 3 point perspective. So this is perspective almost like a bird's eye view, not quite in this, but basically you have 3 vanishing points. You have one either side, so like in 2 point perspective you have one either side, but then you have one at the bottom. Now, depending on the severity of the angle, you position the vanishing point at the bottom further away from your line or closer to. Now for the purposes of this exercise I just did it on the page, so It's quite sort of short and sort of stubby, but again, it's just to illustrate the point. So you start off with a line, you connect up the lines like we did in 2 point, but this time you project out from the bottom, and then you connect the lines at the top where they intersect up to the receding lines and the horizon lines, and then just firm it up with increasing the opacity. So this is good for things like buildings. If you wanted to kind of do something really tall, you could do it that way. Conversely, you could do it the other way, where you're kind of looking up, which is called the worm's eye view. So that's pretty much it, really. In terms of 1 point, 2 point, 3 point perspective, I could easily sort of do a lot more on this in another tutorial, but you could, have a practice, look at this video again, and just have a little bit of a practice, and just sort of see, try out these exercises, 1 point, 2 point, 3 points perspective. Next here, I'm just going to have a play around with, again, I think coming back to 2 point perspective, at this time about shading. So it's just a little tutorial on shading and light sources. Light sources are very important when you're drawing. So in terms of drawing shadow, how do I do shadows? If I'm sort of doing objects, how do I shade, right? Well, again, this varies on the sort of light source, but if we're going to sort of look at something like, say, the sun, putting it, say, somewhere near the horizon line, chances are that, first of all, this part of the cube on the right hand side is going to be the darkest, right? Because it's unlit. There's going to be a little bit of sort of lighting on the side, but not too much, and on the top as well. And then a long shadow coming out from the box in perspective. And again, I'm doing this in accordance with the receding lines, yeah. Long shadow. So this is with the sun above, yeah. So with the sun above, this is a slightly different scenario, because you haven't got any real definite dark sides. What you've got is lighting from the top, so the top of the box will be pretty much well illuminated, the sides of the box not so much, and the shadow will be sort of virtually non-existent. So that's with the sun high above, right? So high above, not much shadow. Then when you get to the other side, you're going to get long shadows again. So this time the other side of the cube is at its darkest. On the right hand side, it's a little bit more illuminated. Same on the top as well. And again, like the one before, you can have a long shadow. Perhaps not that long, I think. I seem to recall I cut this down. But again, long, and also diffuse. Yeah, you want the kind of penumbra of the shadow to be, you want it to kind of make it look sort of diffuse. Yes, and not such a hard edge. So it's just something to remember about light. When you're sort of drawing objects. For example, here I'm just drawing a sphere. I'm using the marquee tool just to kind of illustrate this. And I'm shading it in, and I'm just kind of playing around, creating a kind of hot spot on the side there, and giving it this kind of three-dimensional quality. So play around with spheres as well. Just think about, if you've got a light pointing at a certain angle, the rest of it's going to be in shade, right? Depending on which way, whether you're kind of showing it on the right or on the left. So you can see there, if the light's on the side, same thing again. So I kind of shade on the left-hand side and make that the bright spot. So again, these are just simple exercises, but they're fundamental to drawing. These things are really crucial with drawing, that you understand light and how light behaves. My understanding, of light, well, physics, is that, light travels. You get an intensity of light. The closer to light an object is, or closer a light is to an object, you tend to get higher contrast. But also, light doesn't bend. So I've done a little illustration here to say this is going to be planet Earth. Yeah, so a little picture of planet Earth. I'm just sort of sketching something out now. And imagine this is floating in space, and then you've got the sun there in the distance. Yeah, this is planet Earth. The light from the sun hits planet Earth, but of course light can't bend. And this is why we get night and day, right? I mean, you may know this of course, but it's just something again to think about. Yeah, we are essentially a sphere in space, and you know, when the sun's hitting that part of the Earth, it's in daylight, and the shaded part is nighttime, right? So it's just something to sort of think about. That's it. Hope you enjoyed this video. Be sure to like and please share if you can. That's always helpful. And that's it. Look forward to seeing you next time. Thanks a lot.